What's up, everybody? It's LG Doucet here, joined by John Gillen to talk about the government reopening and the Trump 2K stimmies and everything that might be happening to crypto through the end of the year. There's only 51 days in this insanely long year, but it sounds, John, like they are going to be the most explosive ever for crypto. To quickly recap, yesterday in the morning, we got a long Truth Social rant from Trump saying he's going to give everybody $2,000 at one point or another. No details yet, and some of that has been walked back a little bit, but we will discuss that. But more importantly, late last night, it's rumors started to swirl that the government would be reopening as early as this week. Services would be restored to many places that need them in the U.S., and that a deal had been made. We can go over the details of that deal, but that's probably been done by now. John, I think what everybody's wondering, what does this mean for crypto? Bitcoin is already up above, I think it was above 106 this morning before the market opened. So up, just about maybe like 4 or 5% since in the last 24 hours. What is happening to our tokens, my friend?
Well, I think this is very bullish no matter how you slice it. I think there's a lot of things you can unpack from the political and economic angles. But what the government reopening means is that the government is going to be able to spend money again, which is going to add liquidity, which is going to be bullish for risk assets, digital assets, and for our bags in general. The Treasury General account is now, I think, a little bit over $1 trillion. And they were targeting to get that to 850 billion, and they way overshot. So now that they're going to be opening the government later this week, we should have the finalization of this Wednesday, Friday, but sometime this week. And then that's going to permit a lot of spending. It's going to be very bullish for all markets, but particularly for crypto. I think he's going to do very well here.
Is there anything specifically in the government shutdown that would give us reason to be bullish, or is it just the fact that it's reopening? That's I mean,
bullish? Just the fact that the United States federal government is, I think, somewhere around like 20% of US GDP, just in terms of the size of the government, how many people it employs, how much spending it does, how many people depend on the government for some kind of income, whether it's from some sort of like entitlements or from Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all these different programs that the government has. There's some way that the government is funding a lot of the United States and the broader global economy. So it's a huge part of what drives the market, what drives the economy, and having air in the pipes, so to speak, for so long on that does start to eat into the meat of the economy after a while. Like eventually, it's like kind of like if you stopped eating, you'd burn fat at first, but then eventually you start to digest your muscles, and that's a little bit like what we've been experiencing here. And so now that they're going to be spending again, it's like we're going to start eating again. So we'll be able to regrow some muscle, rebuild some fat storage, so to speak, and like get back to a place of being healthy as opposed to like fasting for spending. Maybe a weird analogy, but that's kind of what's happening. I think the big thing that I'm watching, though from this is that the negotiations. Well, so I think that the negotiations, what they are actually fighting about, didn't actually get resolved. They just kind of voted on the same deal that was proposed like back in March, effectively. So they're kicking the can down the road. There's going to be more discussions about that and what additional spending to do and how to handle healthcare and so forth. So if that gets resolved, that could change some things. But for the large part, this is mostly just like a continuing resolution of previous spending levels and like promises on changes and negotiations in the future. So there's nothing super specific in it that I think is like particularly bullish for crypto. It's just good that we're starting to eat again, so we don't starve to death.
That's the best analogy I've ever heard, especially as somebody who's done a lot of winter camping. That you're right. If I get lost in the woods, my body's going to eat the fat that's on it first before it gets to my muscles. Let's look at a couple tweets from the timeline. So we got this one saying the last time the U.S. government reopened after a shutdown, Bitcoin made a 5-month rally, surging by over 300%. I don't know how accurate that is. Is it true the last time the government was shut down was 2019? I feel like it's been shut down since.
I think that it's been shut down a few times. I think this might be referring to, actually it might be 2019 was the last time it's been shut down. Really? But the last time it was like really long was under Trump. That was the 30-day record. So whether or not it was the last time, I don't know if I recall off the top of my head, but yeah, it's a bullish thing generally. So this doesn't surprise me.
Would you expect a 300% rally from here over the next 5 months?
Well, so, to come back to Bitcoin, right? We, at the same time that this was happening, we had this October 10th, it's been a month now since the big flash crash, the digital asset markets have been chopping down, but Bitcoin held on support, the 50-week EMA, and that I think is the most bullish signal that I've seen, that the bull run is still alive in Bitcoin and in digital assets. If we had broken down under that, I might have said like, hey, I don't really think that the government spending is going to matter one way or the other. But the fact that we have held on this bull market support band, to me, means that there is still room for the bull run to continue and for prices to go higher. So I think, those that like lining up, that coincidence of the government shutdown ending, spending coming back, and the bull market support band being tested and holding, to me indicates that there's likely additional bullish momentum left here. It's not like we're going to be up only. I don't think we're going to see like a 300% rally, like just straight up for 5 weeks, but it's definitely bullish, and it's like it kind of a load off my mind, to be honest.
That's great to hear. I just realized the last time you and I did a live stream was exactly a month ago on October 10th on that day, but we did it hours before the 110% China tariff news that like absolutely nuked the market. You had told me that you would get worried if Bitcoin went to 100K, and it did that day, even though we were still at like 118 when we spoke. And now just looking at those, at that weekly chart, we can see where there was a big red candle that week. And there was another big red one last week where we sat below 100K for maybe a couple hours at different points. John, maybe you can explain really quickly the 50-week EMA. What is that, and why is it so significant for the price of Bitcoin?
Sure. So the 50-week EMA, SMA. So this chart that Ben is showing is the simple moving average, the 50-week simple moving average. It's just a rule of thumb to approximate what some people would consider, like some people use like the 300-day. There's different ways of getting at it. It's like it's the prior year of price action, the average price of the asset, right? So it's a general rule of thumb for what people consider as like the bull market support band. So like generally speaking, if you're trading above the average price for the prior year, you're bullish, right? That things are going up, they're trending higher. If you're trading below that, then you're below where you've been an average price for the prior year, and that's bearish, right? So the analysis that I think most people have of this is that when you're trading below the 50-week SMA, you're generally in a bear market. And when you flip from the bull market into that bearish period, in other words, you get a weekly close of a candle, or maybe not just one, but like a couple of weekly closes of candles below that that level, that's 50-week SMA, that's generally an indication that we've rolled over into a bear market. Bitcoin has always gone into a bear market when that happens. So the fact that it hasn't happened here is a sign. Look, and you can see throughout this bull run, we've bounced off this now, I think 1, 2, 3, I mean, it depends on how you measure, but at least 3 times prior, we've always gone on to put in new all-time highs. And so the fact that this is holding here, and if it doesn't crash and roll over and we shoot down through it, then it should indicate that we are still in a bull market, and that we should expect to see new all-time highs again, especially now that we've tested this and we've gotten a deal with China, clarity on the trade wars, and the government reopening. So it's just one of the most bullish setups you could have, especially for being this late in the cycle. So I think it's all good news from what I'm seeing.
We've talked about this many times on the show. When you say late in the cycle, what exactly are you referring to? How long is this cycle going to last from here?
Yeah, great question. So what I mean by late in the cycle is that historically there have been these 4-year cycles that people have observed in the price of risk assets, but also specifically in Bitcoin. I think that I hesitate to use the term 4-year cycle because I think it confuses people. It implies that the cycle is time-based. And so you could just look at your calendar and say, because we're at this many days, then we must have topped here. And there's a lot of people, analysts, who have done that and made predictions on that have been scarily accurate. However, I think the truth of it is that it is a liquidity cycle that drives business cycles, that drives valuations in risk assets. So the way this works is that it starts with financial conditions. Financial conditions loosening means that it's easier and less costly, less friction to get access to capital, the marginal cost of capital, like how much does it cost to get an additional dollar of capital for investments, for activity, for economic activity, whatever kind. As those conditions loosen, liquidity increases because it's less friction around getting capital, so you can get more capital. That increased liquidity drives overvaluations and bullish momentum in business cycles. That then leads to overvaluations in risk assets and in the markets and the bull runs that we all love. So that's how that goes. That usually follows a 4-year path, but that is not tied to the Bitcoin halving, as most people have misidentified it. and it is kind of an exogenous thing to crypto that does impact crypto a lot. I think that what's happening in this cycle is that because, I mean, look, there's a lot of other analysts who have different reasons for why this might be the case, but because we went to this 0% interest rate environment, a lot of government debt was refinanced, and I think that the timeline on some of these things playing out has shifted. So it's effectively the same thing mechanically happening. It's just that the timeline is going to look a little bit different. So from my perspective, I think that the global macro setup is still strong, is still bullish. Liquidity is still rising. We haven't peaked on that yet, and so there's room for that cycle to continue. Generally, the way these cycles end is with some kind of a blow off top or like very strong bullish momentum. We get to like very strong overvaluations, and I think that you could argue that you've seen that in certain areas of the market, but to me, I don't feel like we've quite run out of gas on that yet. And particularly on Bitcoin and crypto, I don't think that we've seen a major blow off or any sort of like bullish euphoria of the kind that you would associate with the end of a cycle, end of a bull run. So how much longer is it going to go? It's really hard to say at this point because we're a little bit off the map, right? Like historically, if it plays out of the same timeline, you can kind of be like, well, this is where it should kind of line up. But I'm kind of personally thinking it'll take us into 2026. I just don't know how deep or how long it'll go. But we'll see what happens. Like honestly, if we get a new all-time high in Bitcoin in 2026, it'll be unprecedented for the market. So we're gonna have to kind of figure out where we are when that happens. But I'm optimistic that might happen this time. There's a lot of strong fundamentals and demand in the market for the asset that hasn't been waned. We've also worked through a lot of selling from OGs, and Bitcoin still has held its bull market support. So it's unusually bullish strength for this late in the cycle.
I like that take, and I think that this is. I do agree that the cycle take is I think what people have hedged to for the last while to try and explain things, and maybe even to get ready for this current bull cycle that we're in. But we are in unprecedented times, and especially you see things like this, and this is a good reminder of everything that's happening right now. I think on the macro economic side, right, is that we can talk about the stimmies really quick as well. We don't know exactly when that's going to hit, but with the Trump stimmies and more rate cuts potentially happening, although Powell was saying it's not a foregone conclusion that there will be rate cuts in December, so we're going to have to wait for that. But record highs across the stock markets, the AI boom that is potentially coming, and or bubble, according to Bill Gates, plus the stimulus checks. A lot of people are saying that this is, these are the most optimal conditions to see that blow off top. And also, I'll tell you, John, that over the weekend I recorded with Matt Crosby, who's a fantastic Bitcoin analyst. That episode actually comes out on Milk Road today, very shortly. And we were talking this is before the Trump news. This is on Saturday. We were at 101 and $600. Matt told me that his expectation by the end of the year is 180K. John, how realistic is that? 180K blow off top.
I think that these predictions come from the fact that Bitcoin has done things like this in the past. And by the past, I mean like the recent past, right? Like Bitcoin's move off of the lows in April was very strong. I think it was like up close to like around 50% in just a couple of weeks. So calling for that would just be kind of like a similar move to what we saw in April. And that, because Bitcoin has done a move like that already once this year, it seems like it could possibly do it again. So, you hear these numbers from people like Tom Lee and Matt, and like, you think, well, how could it get from 100K to 180K in a couple of weeks? It's done it before. It's done it this year. So we're not really like calling for anything that's absurd. Bitcoin does do that. When Bitcoin starts Bitcoining, it just goes, and like the squeeze to the upside is the potential for that is very strong because this is a limited supply asset, and once you clear the order books and you go into price discovery, the marginal demand for the asset really can move the price quite rapidly. So I know that sounds like Moon Boy hopium, but it's not outside the realm of possibility, and it's not beyond what Bitcoin has already done this year. So I don't have any like specific targets on that myself. The target I've had for the top of this cycle for myself was just always north of 140K. I thought we would get to 140,000, and then I have no idea beyond that. And I don't really know how to predict beyond that because it could go to 150, it could go to 250. It just depends on how much demand there is and how quickly we clear through the order books. Because if you run out of sellers, you really just there's no telling how high it could go.
Let's look at Polymarket for Bitcoin 2025. We don't have one for 2026 yet, but let's very quickly look at this. So still the leading market on Polymarket for Bitcoin price action is 100K with 67% only. The next after that is 120K. And this is what price will Bitcoin hit in 2025. So obviously it's hit these already, but they reset the bet every time it does, I think, so to let people bet on it again. So 120K has a 42% chance. And then the next one after that is actually 90K with a 33% chance. So that's the podium right now for Bitcoin predictions as per Polymarket. So Polymarket, not super bearish just yet, only 42% for 120K, 25% for 130K. And then 140, your target, has an only 13% chance as per Polymarket right now. Matt's estimation doesn't even exist on Polymarket. There is no 180. There's only 170, 200, and 250, with 200 and 250 having a 1% chance, currently 1.4 and 1.5% chances. I think those might be a little bit of liquid right now. John, if you were making a bet, which one would you pick here? What's the easy money?
For like, what do we hit next in 2025?
Yeah, you got to pick one of these markets on Polymarket for Bitcoin. Which one are you picking?
I mean, I think that's actually kind of right. I do think that we're more likely now. I would say as of right now, we are slightly more likely to hit 120K than 100K, but those would be the two highest probabilities of what comes next out of these things. Yeah. So like, look, we've gone down, we've retested 100. We've bounced off, we've shown support. We might have to take some time and build a base, but there's a lot of bullish momentum and a lot of dry powder that's about to come out of the government's cannon. So I think 120 seems like the most likely next target. Oh, I just lost you. I don't know if that's on my end or not.
No, I was muted.
Okay.
Let's jump over to Ethereum really quick. There is no market on Polymarket for 4K. There's only 3K and 5K. 3K is sitting at 51%, and going down today, so down 7%. So people will, excited that we're getting further away from $3,000 Ethereum. But there's only a 21% chance still of $5,000 Ethereum by the end of 2025, which would be an all-time high. I think the all-time high is like 49.85. So 5K would pretty much be an all-time high. How likely is this one? 21%. Is the market pricing this one accurately for ETH?
I think this is free money because both me and Tom Lee are trying to get to 5% of the Ethereum supply, and one of us is going to do it. No, yeah, I do think that Ethereum does get to 5K. I do think that once it does, look, if Ethereum gets to 5,000 and holds that as support, that to me is the strongest possible signal that you could get that there's a validation of the thesis for the altcoin market from investors, and that we will likely see an alt season as a result of that, right? Like those dominoes fall pretty clearly for me. ETH gets to 5K. That means that there's value in the alt space, and then investors recognize that and are willing to allocate to back up that thesis. And then from there, it's, hold on to your butt season. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking for. I've been looking for 5K ETH for a while, and when it gets here, I'm going to be very happy to see it.
John, last question for you. Are there any other major catalysts that you're looking for between now and the end of the year as dates that we could circle on the calendar?
I mean, I'm sure there's probably something that'll come to mind after we're done with this. I think that the next thing people are looking for is the Fed's FOMC meeting in December. I personally don't think that is that big of a deal. I think right now we've really worked through a lot of the overhang, a lot of the fears, a lot of the worries. We've worked through a huge amount of sell pressure from Bitcoin OGs. We've gotten a deal with China. We've got clarity on trades and trade deals, trade wars, tariffs. We've gotten a deal with the government to reopen. To me, it seems like all systems are go. It's kind of just like let the market do what the market's going to do. And the reason why I think this is so bullish is that when you're in a bull run, especially you get into the deeper stages of a bull run, the momentum trades tend to continue to gather momentum and get stronger, right? So like where people have shown already that if they are in a bullish environment, they are willing to allocate capital, right? That generally is like something that the market is telling you as information. So that's why the momentum trade plays out. It's saying like, hey, a lot of the market participants think that this is where they want to allocate their capital if they're bullish. And if things are bullish and we have that setup continue, you would expect that allocation to continue in those ways. That may obviously break at some point, but with the information we got from holding the bull market support band on Bitcoin is that the market's not broken, the momentum is not broken, the structure's not broken, and that we should expect a continuation of the bull runs that we've seen in gold, in Bitcoin, in risk assets, in the Mag 7. And so, yeah, I think that what you want to do now is not outsmart yourself, not overtrade your book, not get cute, not get into leverage or whatever. Get comfy and spot in some of these things that have already shown a lot of strength in this cycle, in this bull market, and wait for a bull run, because there could be very strong momentum into the end of the year, and it's a great time to just not outsmart yourself and just participate in that and let the market come to you.
When are we expecting these 2K stimmy check to hit?
I don't know if we're going to get. Dude, one of the most surreal experiences of my life was in COVID, when I opened my mail and I had a check with Donald Trump's signature on it. And I was just staring at it like,
Lucky.
What is happening right now? I mean, it was for very, very little, but it was a check from the president. Look, I don't know if that's actually going to happen. Scott Besson has been on TV saying that stimulus might come in the form of other things that have been worked out through legislation and so forth. But in any event, the point is that there's liquidity coming, there's stimulus coming. And I think one of the things that came out of these elections we had recently here in the country is that Trump realizes that he's been focused very much on international relations and trying to make peace, but not so much focused on domestic policy, domestic outcomes. He's been focused on a lot of high-level trade deals and investment into the country, and there's been trillion-dollar deals talked about around that, but he hasn't really spent so much time and attention making like everyday Main Street Americans feel like they're prioritized and they're getting taken care of. So I think you're going to see a big pivot in both messaging and policy from him and from the Republican administration. So that should be bullish, and I'm going to watch for what that does. But I don't know if we're going to get checks again. I don't know if that's going to be what happens here. Even though that was a surreal experience.
Good take. And I think I agree, Mr. Trump, after what happened in New York at the mayoral election, and also Trump getting booed at a football game yesterday, I think he's realizing that a lot of people locally might be very unhappy with him, despite the work he has been doing internationally, right? So keen to see when that happens, if that happens. I know what happened last time I got started in crypto and my career took off, as I made a podcast about NBA Top Shot, and everybody wanted to use their Stimmy checks to buy that. So who knows what's going to come along, John, this time? Maybe Pokemon cards or maybe just our altcoins. We'll find out. John, thanks for coming on, man. We got John is on our show regularly. He's on once or twice a week on the Daily Show. We also have Milk Road Macro that you can listen to. 2 episodes coming up this week, where John honestly talks to like experts way beyond even his cognitive ability, who've been doing this for 40, 50 years, even longer, and have really not. I don't mean that as shade, John. Don't take it like that. I'm just saying these guys are these are the guys that you download your brain waves from, and you learn a lot from. But anyways, Milk Road Macro, one of my favorite channels right now to learn about exactly how this stuff works. We also have the newsletter, and of course we'll be right back on Milk Road every day talking crypto and what's happening with our tokens. John, thanks for coming on, man. Hopefully, I hope it's not an entire other month until we do this again, and not some other crazy like emergency session, but I think it'd be great to do these more regularly, and I feel like we're going to get a lot of opportunities in the coming weeks and months to chat emergency pods when people need to hear what's going on.
Yeah, well, hopefully in the next time we do this, it won't be too long, and it'll be because we are crashing to the upside. So we'll have an emergency conversation about how high our bags are going to go.
We're back here for 127, man. When we get to 127, or even I think 126.5, we're going to be right back here on the live stream. John, good to chat again. And Milk Road folks, thanks for joining. We'll see you guys every day here right on Milk Road.
Thanks, LG.